to talk about a very, very worrying new survey of teenagers and what their relationships are like. Good afternoon to you, Jon.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I was absolutely stunned when I read the report that was being put out about your survey. You do lots of surveys of what young people's experiences are like, what their views are. But this is particularly disturbing because this is talking about a survey, 10,000 children aged 13 to 17 in England and Wales, just about their experience of relationships. And these are the sort of relationships, romantic relationships, where you would expect this is the loving relationship that they don't start them out on a life of, making hopefully a marriage and a long-term partnership with somebody to, form a family and have a happy life with. But your findings are incredibly disturbing. Tell us what they are.
I think disturbing is the right word, and that's what you said is what we want for our children. Exactly, isn't it? We want them to grow up, find someone, fall in love. What we've done is we surveyed 10,000. So this is a really large sample. You might say who's going to win an election of just 2,000. This is 10,000 young people, and we asked them about, as you say, what's happened in relationships, romantic relationships. 50% of half of those teenage children said that they had experienced either violence or some sort of coercion or control in their relationships. What does that mean? Let's be just really practical about it. A fifth of teenage children who are in relationships said that they had been pressured into sexual activity they didn't want to be part of. A fifth of teenage children said that they'd been assaulted in a relationship, so hit, shoved, pushed. A fifth said that their partner had shared an explicit image of them without their permission. A quarter said that they were scared to disagree with their partner, and a quarter said they were scared to end the relationship. Now, there's a lot of difference between some of those things. Some of them are less scary, some of the other things, but they're both pretty awful. And when you step back, what you see is a third, 1 in 3 kids, one of them, if they're in a relationship, they're experiencing some sort of violence in that relationship.
And it's being normalised.
Something is really wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I remember a survey a few years ago, and I was absolutely blown away by it, by a survey, and it was of boys and girls around this age, and they seem to view that, of course, if I was talking to another boy and my boyfriend was jealous, that he'd have every right to hit me. And you're sort of, you what? I mean, who taught you that? Why? Okay. Unless I've always been a view, like, if you're in those sort of relationships, and the people I've met over the years who have been in relationships that I would consider to be very unhealthy, and any of those things I would consider to be very unhealthy relationships, they tend to have come from families where they've seen this. They think that's normal. Are all these children living in these completely dysfunctional families, or are they seeing this stuff and having it normalised for them elsewhere? And if so, where?
Yeah, it's such an important question. So this type of violence is much more likely to happen to a child if they're having difficulties at home or if they've got other things going wrong in their lives. That's definitely true. That's what we mean by a child being vulnerable. Bad things can tend to happen to them. But we've got to wake up. You don't get a result that says 30% of children in relationships are facing violence if it's some sort of niche problem just for a small number of people. This is happening across all sorts of different age groups for children, all sorts of different backgrounds. As you say, boys, strikingly, as well as girls. And so I think as parents, I've got 3 children pretty much in this age group, we've all got to wake up and say, wow. The frustrating thing is this data hasn't been collected before, and so it's really hard to know whether it's got worse. I suspect it has, and the reason I'd say that is we also ask what's going on online.
Yeah, I was thinking it must be something to do with online.
A third of all teenage children have seen content online promoting violence against women and girls, like actively promoting.
Can I stop you, Jon? Something's just changed with your microphone. I'm not quite sure what's happened. We're just a little bit harder to hear you. Hopefully, whatever it is, we can sort out very quickly so we can hear you a bit more clearly.
Hopefully so.
That's better.
Is that any better? Ah, how funny. So yeah, a third of children have seen some sort of stuff online saying promoting violence against women and girls.
Promoting? I mean, there's a difference between seeing it and I've had to say, goodness me, most of Netflix seems to be about violence and sexual violence towards women, but every single series seems to be. But when you say promoting it, like, you mean Andrew Tate style?
Yeah, so we mean content where someone is either encouraging it or acting it out or suggesting it's a way to run a relationship. And what's striking is that a number of those cases, it's the platform, of course, that's pushing it. It's not a
the
child
algorithm
looking.
is saying,
algorithm.
hey, you like this, you'll like this. Yeah.
You're like this. Now, let's just leave a bit of space for optimism. The charity I run, the Youth Endowment Fund, we don't deliver stuff. We're not looking for any funding, but we've done a piece of work looking at, well, what actually works here. And what you find is when youth workers are trained and they go into schools and they talk about the telltale signs of abuse, levels of violence fall. They fall by about 20%. Now, that doesn't solve the problem, but I'll take that every single day of the week.
Obviously. I mean, again, but at least just sending the message, hey, this isn't normal. I mean, I've had a certain conversation with my daughter's school about, you need to be really clear about what is and what isn't normal behaviour. And of course, schools say, well, we don't want to talk about what's normal. No, you need to talk about these things. What is and what is not acceptable normal behaviour.
Yeah, and this idea that teachers can just turn up and teach this stuff. We wouldn't expect someone to teach physics without any training. That would be insane.
Sadly, we do in a lot of our schools, John. I hate to tell you that. But maybe a little less time teaching children they might be in the wrong body and more time telling them how to protect their own bodies and minds might be a good thing. John, it's really important research, and I'm so glad we got you on the show, Executive Director of the Youth Endowment Fund. I hope you'll come on again. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Benedict Spencer, I've got a teenager, so these sort of stories just shout out at me, but this is terrifying. I'm thinking everything on the internet. I'm thinking music videos. Yeah. I'm thinking, a lot of the stuff. Virtually every drama on TV has women being the victims of sexual violence.
I was going to say that seems to be the most popular sort of brand of drama these days. Yes. Yeah. The other thing, of course, is the rise in popularity of true crime documentaries and podcasts, which is almost exclusively a fixation on male murderers and sexual abusers of women. This stuff has become
women. By
mainstream.
the way, you know who like this stuff? Women.
Yeah. And this is why, this needs to be sort of taken. But I do think it's very interesting what was just touched upon there, which is that this data hasn't been collected before. I do suspect that whilst the internet and mass media is promoting it, I suspect the original numbers, the amount of it below the surface, was always a lot higher than people probably imagined. And it was probably people who were from broken homes, more vulnerable backgrounds, people too afraid to talk.
And I would say, people talk about domestic violence, of course. No, it hasn't. I mean, you get the Jess Phillips in the world. I know she's a good campaign. She's got a lot of followers, but she's a good campaigner on this issue. But there's also an element where people, people didn't talk about it before. There weren't stats for it because it was legal for you to hit your wife. It was expected that you did that. So things are very, 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 very different now. And what is normalised and what is, police used to just sort of turn up and go, it was a domestic and leave. But I don't know what kids are seeing at home, what they're seeing online, but we need to tackle this because this is really, really scary stuff.
Absolutely, because it just permeates into adulthood, and if you don't deal with it, it becomes a lifelong pattern. And it's, as we've been talking about with prison, it's really hard to get people off once they've started down the path.